Srivas Thakur, Advaita Acharya, they're all Brahmins. And they're all doing puja in their homes. That's of course that's the standard, what to expect, and offering the bhoga and taking the prasadam and doing the aradhana, worship, archana in the morning every day. And so so many devotees would gather there in the morning collecting flowers for the puja. And Sriman Pandit, the younger brother of Srivas Thakur, he came to that place in a very joyful mood, and the devotees were surprised seeing him so joyful, and they inquired, wow, you're so happy today? And he said, yes, certainly, there's a reason. And they said, well, tell us the reason. And then he said, well, listen carefully. He said, Parama Adbhut Kotha, the most extraordinary news, Parama Adbhut Kotha, Maha Ashambhab, the impossible, that which we desired, was deep desire in our hearts, which we thought would never be fulfilled. Maha Ashambhab. Nimai Pandit, Hoilu Parama Vaishnav. Nimai Pandit has become a great Vaishnav. So a Parama Vaishnav, not yet he's to become a devotee, he's become a Prema Bhakta. He's constantly shedding tears of love of God. And in this way, the news quickly spread around Navadip. We were hearing how Sachi Devi was perplexed. Sachi Devi was perplexed, seeing the behavior of her son, and even she was so concerned that of his you could say his absorption in Krishna consciousness, he lost interest in the household activities. Birakta, Birakta mentioned, he lost activities, became very detached. And Sachi Devi, she would bring a Vishnu Priya. Can you imagine the beauty of Vishnu Priya? Such a gorgeous, the goddess of fortune, and she's perhaps 14 years old, 13, 14 years old, even perhaps younger. So but I think when Mahaprabhu took sannyas, she was Loki Priya or Vishnu Priya was, I think she was 16. So she was probably 12, 13 years old, 12, 13, 14 years old, his wife, Vishnu Priya. The goddess of fortune. What exquisite beauty and charm and character. And Sachi Devi, she would bring Vishnu Priya and sit Vishnu Priya in front of Mahaprabhu to try to interest him in household activities. And she would pray. Sachi Devi was praying to Lord Vishnu that please make Nimai peaceful and stay at home. I'm helpless. I've lost my husband, I've lost my older son, he took sannyas, Jagannath Mishra departed. Nimai is everything to me, therefore we chant Jai Shachi Nandan. It's kind of nice and musical in the kirtan, Jai Shachi Nandan, but actually we should consider the significance of what we're saying, Jai Shachi Nandan. The dearmost of Sachi Devi. Mahaprabhu is everything to Sachi Devi. And so she's praying to Lord Vishnu that please keep Nimai satisfied and peaceful and that he remains at home. On different occasions, Sachi Devi, she would pray to Lord Vishnu for the benefit of Nimai. It's extraordinary, her character. When Mahaprabhu was in Shantipur having taken sannyas, and he visited Shantipur as the arrangement of Nityananda Prabhu to give an opportunity for all the devotees in Navadip to spend a little more time with Goshundor, he suddenly took sannyas, and it was very painful, very shocking and very painful for the devotees in Mayapur, and therefore Srila Nityananda Prabhu, he made an arrangement that Mahaprabhu go to the house of Srila Advaita Acharya Thakur in Shantipur, and there remain for some time, and he called all the devotees from Mayapur to come and spend some time. So Mahaprabhu was performing kirtan at that time. The kirtans were so ecstatic. Kirtan Kodite Prabhu Sharva Bhav Udoy. When those kirtans began, Sharva Bhav Udoy, all of the features, all of the emotions of Sarva Bhav Udoy, of love of God, would erupt in the body of the Lord. Stamba, Kampa, Pulakastra, Gadgara, Pralai. He became stunned like a pillar. He's quivering like an autumn leaf. Pulakastra, the hairs on his body were standing on end like a ripened jackfruit. Gadgara, his throat choked up. Pralai, devastation. So all of these symptoms of the emotions of love of God were manifest in the body of the Lord when he was performing the kirtan. And he would spin in the air and spin and crash to the ground. crashed to the ground. Now seeing Goshunda crashing to the ground in that way, Sachi Devi, she became so much pain to actually seeing Mahaprabhu crashing to the ground, just like a mother. She doesn't think of him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. She thinks of him as her son. And so she prayed to Lord Vishnu that that Ballakal hoite jai koilo jai toma koilu shebon. All of the service that I've performed for you since my childhood, Ballakal hoite jai koilu toma shebon. Ta e Paul more deho Narayan. No, Lord Narayan, you give me the fruit. I'm begging for the fruit, for the result of all of that service that I've performed to you since my childhood. And what benediction? Give me this benediction. She said, "Hey Paul, more deho." Please give me the fruit of all of that service. And what benediction did she pray for? That Jai Kale Nimai Pori Dharani Upare. That time, those times when Nimai falls on the ground, Dharani Upare, Beta Janana Lage Nimai Shodiyade, that he doesn't feel any pain in his body. So in this way, Sachi Devi, she would pray to Lord Vishnu for the welfare of Nimai, completely forgetting that he himself is the supreme, that she forgets that she was Majasoda in the previous. She has no recollection of being Majasoda. She's completely convinced that she's Sachi Devi, the wife of Jagannath Mishra, and her son is Nimai Vishwambar, and they live in Mayapur. She has no idea that he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, in this way, she was perplexed by his behavior. And then Mahaprabhu, and we were hearing last week when he came back from class, his studies, and Sachi Devi, she inquired that what did you teach today? And Mahaprabhu, we heard in detail, he gave elaborate teachings, just as Lord Kapila had instructed his mother. And Kapil Bhave, we were hearing Kapil Bhave. Kapil Bhave Prabhu Mayer Shikai. Kapil Bhave Prabhu Mayer Shikai. He taught his mother in the mood of Kapil Dev, Shuni a Bhakya Shachi Ananda Milaya. And then Sachi Devi was so much in bliss, hearing Mahaprabhu give her so much affection and attention, and in detail described to her the same teachings that Lord Kapila had taught his mother Devahuti. So then Mahaprabhu even began in his class. He began his class, but he was, as soon as the students sat down and chanted the name of Hari, he immediately became overwhelmed with feelings of love of Godhead, and he was unable to follow the usual lesson plans. And simply the verbal roots of all the words and all explanations that he was giving, he was simply discussing the holy name of Krishna. So the students were somewhat perplexed by this, and they went to see the teacher of Nimai, Gangadas Pandit. There's so much we can learn from this particular behavior of the students. If one has a concern about one's authorities, then no need to start gossiping and broadcasting on the Facebook page and discussing amongst your peers, but rather one should lodge one's concern with the appropriate authorities. So the students, they went to see Gangadas Pandit. And we're reading today from text number 261 of the Madhya Sri Chaitanya Bhagavat Vrindavan Thakur. So the students, they gathered together and then they went to see Gangadas Pandit. Shardava Shishya Gangadas Pandit Deshtane Kohilen Shab Joto Thakur Bhyakanai. All of the students went to the residence of Gangadas Pandit, Kohilen Shab Jota Thakur Bhyakanai, and they described everything that Nimai had been saying. They were saying that, he came back from Gaya, and he simply, when he speaks now, he connects every single word to Krishna, and all of his commentaries describe Krishna. He doesn't mention anything else apart from Krishna. He's always chanting the name of Krishna. The hairs of his body stand on end sometimes, and he laughs and shouts and manifests different moods. So in this way, the students, they gave a complete report to Gangadas Pandit, and they submitted all of this information to the Gangadas Pandit, and then they inquired, so what can we do? So the Navadip Shiromani, the jewel of the teachers of Navadip, that Navadip Ache was that Navadip Ache Oddapak Shiromani Gangadash Pandit Heno Shandipani. We know that he was the teacher of Krishna in Krishna Lila Sandipani Muni. He appeared in Navadip as Gangadas Pandit, as to be the teacher of Nimai. So smilingly, he smiled, and then he responded to the students that, okay, this afternoon I will meet with Nimai and I will discuss with him about the proper balance, in how to balance one's spiritual and material duties in life. This is a common topic that we have in our programs of instruction for devotees coming to ISKCON, how to balance one's various obligations. So Gangadas Pandit, he mentioned to the students that I'll give him some guidance on how to make a proper balance in these various spiritual and material obligations in life, and I'll see that he carries on and tutors you properly from now on. So in the afternoon, you should all come with Nimai, and I will discuss with them. So in the afternoon, the students, they also came along with Nimai to see Gangadas Pandit, along with Nimai. We're reading from text 271. Guru Charan Dhule Prabhu Lai Shidai, taking the dust of his teacher's lotus feet. Guru Charan Dhuli, Guru Charan Dhuli, Prabhu Lai Shidai, he took on his head the dust of the lotus feet of Gangadas Pandit. And he received benedictions from Gangadas Pandit. Bidda Labh Ho, Guru, Ashirabad Kore, Bidda Labh Hora, become learned. What a way to interact with an authority. Nimai goes and sees, and he takes the dust from his feet, and in reciprocation, Gangadas Pandit, he gives the blessings. Vidya Labho, become learned, become learned. So then, Gangadas Pandit, he began to instruct Nimai in these, how to make this proper balance between the spiritual and the material objectives in life. And he explained that your grandfather, Nilambar Chakravarti Thakur, he was a very learned scholar. Now, when you come to Mayapur, you can visit Belpukur, a very transcendental place that's in the island of Simanta Deep, Belpukur. And there actually the Leela of the four Kumaras being instructed by Lord Shiva, that Leela took place there. And they worship Lord Shiva with the Baal Pata, the Baal leaves. Therefore that place is called Belpukur. And there's a beautiful deity of Sri Radha Madan Mohan, which is worshipped by the maternal grandfather of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Nilambar Chakrabarti Thakur. So even now in Belpukur you'll see the many beautiful residences and a very Brahminical environment there. Actually, it was the Rishi Para, it was the neighborhood of the scholars, and Nilambar Chakrabarti Thakur, he was residing there, and he was a very learned scholar in the astrology, and he gave the astrological reading at the time of Nimai's birth. So that's the father of Sachi Devi. Originally they were from Sri Hatta in East Bengal, Bangladesh. And he came and had his residence here in Belpukur in Mayapur. So Nilambar Chakrabarti Thakur, he was such a learned scholar. So Gangadas Pandit, he's saying, your grandfather, the father of Sachi Devi, yeah, your grandfather, maternal grandfather, he was a very learned scholar. And your father, Jagannath Mishra, also was a very expert exponent of the Shastra and a very learned scholar. So there are no fools, no fools. Gangadas Pandit said, there's no fools to be seen in your father's dynasty and nor in your mother's dynasty. And you yourself are so qualified, you're such an intellect, you're so qualified to teach, so you should do this. Even from the time of being a young child, when he first entered the Tol of Gangadas Pandit, what a student was Nimai Joto Bakya Gangadas Pandit Koren, whatever Gangadas Pandit said, Joto Bakya Gangadas Pandit Koren, Shukrit Shunile Matro, hearing it once, Tako Doren, I would remember that. So, what an extraordinary intellect. So, he's saying that you should utilize this wonderful capacity for scholarship and learning and education. You should utilize this to be kind upon students, and in this way be comfortably settled in your varna as a Brahmin and practice Krishna consciousness. We're all very happy that you're become so excited and so inspired about Krishna consciousness, but you should go on with your duty as a teacher and teach properly, teach according to the standard curriculum, and in this way we'll be very satisfied. He said that Iha Jani, you should understand this is text number 276. Iha Jani, Balo Mate, Koro Adhyayan Hoile Shai Vaishnav Brahman. That Iha Jani, you should know this, that Balo Mate, Adhyayan Hoile, because by study, Shai Vaishnav Brahman, you can produce Vaishnav Brahmins. By teaching and studying, but by studying a person can become a Vaishnav Brahmin. By studying a person becomes a Vaishnav Brahmin. Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in his purport, he's commenting that as a result of studying Shastra, you and your students will actually become Vaishnav Brahmins. If one doesn't undergo purificatory process under the guidance of an acharya, particularly here he's implying study of Shastra. If one doesn't undergo purificatory process under the guidance of an acharya, and he becomes indifferent to the Vedas, then he will face disturbance in realizing devotional service of Lord Vishnu. So in this way, Gangadas Pandit is inducing Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to carry on with his proper duties as a Brahmin and teach and practice Krishna consciousness at the same time. Now, Mahaprabhu is very much appreciative of the instructions that were given by Gangadas Pandit. Prabhu Bole, text 279, Prabhu Bole, Tomar dui charane prasade, by the mercy of your lotus feet, dui charane prasade, Tomar dui charane prasade, Navadipe keo more na pare Bibade. There's no one in Navadip who can have an argument with me. There's no one in Navadip who can make any, suggest any improvement on my commentaries by the mercy of your two lotus feet. So poetic, huh? What a response. Gangadas Pandit gives him instructions and Mahaprabhu, Prabhu Bali Tama Duri Chodane Prashad Navadipe Kayo Morna Pare Bibad. By your mercy, there's no one in Navadip who can stand before me and argue the Shastra. By your mercy, you have given me so much that I've become such a brilliant scholar that no one can even give me any suggestions for improvement on my commentaries. And in this way, he's indicating that he very much appreciated the advice that Gangadas Pandit gave. Gangadas Pandit Charane Namaskar, paying his obeisances at the lotus feet of Gangadas Pandit, Bed Poti, Saraswati Poti, Shishajar. Yeah. Oh, actually, yeah, that's what he's saying. The Lord offered respects to Gangadas Pandit and then he departed. And now Vrindavandas Thakur, he is offering his respects to Gangadas Pandit. He's saying that Gangadas Pandit Chardane Namaskar, I offer my humble obeisances to the lotus feet of Gangadas Pandit, who, Ved Poti Saraswati Poti, the master of the Vedas, the master of the goddess of learning Saraswati, Ved Poti Saraswati Poti, Shishya Jar, who is his disciple, Gangadas Pandit, to whom I am offering my humble obeisances unto his lotus feet. His disciple is the master of the Vedas, is the husband of the goddess of learning, Saraswati Poti. So in this way, Vishwambara Rai, along with his students, he is walking down the paths of Navadip and he appeared like the shining, a brilliant full moon surrounded by the dark firmament of the dark sky, surrounded by so many stars, like the brilliant full moon in the dark sky, bluish sky, a brilliant full moon surrounded by the shining stars of his students as he walked down the pathways of Navadip. So then he began to carry on, having taken the instructions from Gangadas Pandit. He again went along with his students to the Ganga. After meeting Gangadas Pandit, they then journeyed to the banks of the Ganga to conduct their class. And he came and sat down on the banks of the river Ganga, and then he began his explanations, and just like before, he was refuting the different arguments and establishing his different points, and the students were enchanted by his erudition. And Mahaprabhu would say that in Kali Yuga, the so-called scholars who have no idea of conjugation, he receives the title of Bhattacharya. He has no knowledge of philosophy, but he has the audacity to debate. Who amongst these so-called Bhattacharyas, who can challenge me? All the students were in ecstasy. Again, Nimai, again, he's demonstrating like his previous character of pride, and he's challenging the other scholars. Now, hearing him, you could say, boast in this way, the other scholars who were coming to the banks, along the banks of Ganga to pay their respects to Ganga Devi, they heard Vishwambara's bold words, and they simply remained silent in great fear, their scholarly pride broken, hearing the bold statements of Vishwambara. Is there anyone who can challenge Navadip Chandra? Anyone in the whole of Nadia who can challenge Navadip Chandra? So at that time, there was one Brahmin who's had his residence on the banks of the Ganga. His name was Ratnagarbha Acharya, and he was a great Vaishnava. And he had sons. He had 3 sons, Krishnananda, Jiva, and Yadunath Kavichandra. And they were all like bees, like honeybees that were humming around the lotus feet of Krishna. So what a family. So Ratnagarbha Acharya, he was very fond of Srimad Bhagavatam. And he was sitting on the front porch of his residence, which was just nearby the place where Nimai had sat down with his students and was beginning his class on the banks of the Ganga. So at that time, Ratnagarbha Acharya had his Srimad Bhagavatam with him, and he began reading a verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. The verse he read is a very significant verse. This verse is a verse which was spoken by it's described as the verse is the verse wherein in Srimad Bhagavatam, the 10th canto, where the leader is described how the cowherd boys, they went to the Jajik Brahmins, and they requested, because Krishna and Balaram and the cowherd boys, it was a little late in the morning, they'd been taking the cows early in the morning, and now on the banks of the Jamuna, and they were feeling hungry, and Krishna said that just over here some Brahmins are performing yagyas. Just imagine what a society was Brajabhumi when Krishna was going with the cows and taking the cows to the river and the calves. At the same time, here and there in the villages, there were Yajik, highly qualified Brahmins, and they were performing Vedic yagyas, fire sacrifices. That was Brajabhumi. Just here and there in the villages, you see such a thing these days in the village, in the remote villages, that highly qualified Brahmins are performing the Vedic yagyas. Do you see that nowadays in the villages? No, you don't see it. But that was Brajabhumi, and Krishna explained to the cowherd boys that you go and see these Brahmins and you request them for some prasadam. And but don't mention our names, Krishna and Balaram, because they're a little bit, Varnashram attached, and they think the Brahmins are so superior. So you just go and beg some some prasadam from them. Now the Brahmins, they didn't even notice, they didn't even acknowledge the cowherd boys that had come. They completely ignored them and carried on performing their yagyas. So a bit rude. This is their not understanding that the eternal associates of Sri Hari had come, and considering themselves so highly qualified because of their learning of the Vedas. There's a verse, actually, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he quotes it on several occasions, that Chaturvedi, what is that? Name Bhaktas Chaturvedi, Mad Bhakta Swa Pachapriyaha. That Name Bhaktas Chaturvedi, even if one is a Chaturvedi, in other words, he studied all of the Vedas, 4 Vedas, Chaturvedi. You hear Trivedi, and sometimes the title is Trivedi, and a Chaturvedi, actually that's given to one who studied all the 4 Vedas. So Name Bhaktas Chaturvedi, even if one is a learned scholar in all the Vedas, if he's Name Bhaktas, if he's not my devotee, Name Bhaktas Chatur, Mad Bhakta Swapacha Priyaha. He's not as dear to me as my devotee, who may have been born in a family of Swapacha, dog eaters. That's what Mahaprabhu is quoting this verse. It's from the Hari Bhakti, it's from the Hari Bhakti Shuddhodaya. Name Bhakta Chaturvedi, Mad Bhakta Swapacha Priyaha. That the devotee, even though being born in a family of dog eaters, if he's become a devotee, he's more dear to me than the scholar of the 4 Vedas who's not my devotee. Tasmai jayam tatodayam sacha puja chatahi haham. Everything he offers should be accepted. Everything should be offered to him. And that person is as that Swapacha Vaishnava, born in the family of dog eaters, who's become a Vaishnava. He's no longer a dog eater, but he's coming from a low birth. That person, you should offer everything to that person. You should accept whatever that person offers. Sacha puja chatahi aham. That person is as worshipable as I am. Mahaprabhu often quotes this verse, and so we hear sometimes this is the disqualification of the learned scholars. They become proud and consider themselves the most elevated in society. So they completely ignored the cowherd boys who came. And the cowherd boys, they went back to Krishna and Balaram and told them. And then Krishna and Balaram said, okay, then you go to the wives of the Brahmins and you make the same request. And you mention us to the wives of the cowherd Brahmins. And so the cowherd boys, they went back, and then when they mentioned to the wives of the Yajik Brahmins that Krishna and Balaram are hungry, immediately the wives of the Yajik Brahmins, the Brahmanis, the Thakuranis, they immediately arranged, yes, certainly, and all the foodstuffs, all the tasty types of food which had been offered in yagya, all the different types of prasara, and they immediately began collecting. And the cowherd boys were saying, you give to us, we'll take it. And they said, no, we don't offer the parcel, takeaway parcel system here. No. We personally will go and deliver. They wanted opportunity to see Krishna, and we'll personally go and deliver. So then they went along with the cowherd boys into the groves of Braj, to the banks of the Jamuna, and deep into the forest, and there they saw Krishna. So then Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukdev Goswami, he's describing what the cowherd made, what the wives of the Yajik Brahmins, he's describing what they saw. This verse from Srimad Bhagavatam, Kentandra, the wives of the Yajik Brahmins, they saw the beautiful young boy, whose complexion was blackish, and he had a golden yellowish cloth, and a nicely decorated flower garland around his neck, and a peacock feather slanted sideways out of his crown. He was with his friends, and he stood leaning against a dear friend, his left hand on the shoulder of that friend, a cowherd boy, and with his right hand he was twirling a beautiful lotus flower. His ears were decorated with beautiful earrings in the shape of lotus flowers, and his cheeks were decorated with designs of sandalwood paste, and a sweet smile played upon his lotus-like mouth. So Ratnagarbha Acharya, he was reading this particular verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I often reflect that when I was a student 40 years ago, and I had the Krishna book, and I was taking a train journey for 1 hour, I remember. And I had just gotten this Krishna book from the Hare Krishna devotees, and I just opened it up randomly, and I had read, the first thing I read was this story of the wives of the Yogic Brahmins give prasadam to Krishna and Balaram. That's the first story that I read from the Krishna book, and I remember reading that 40 years ago, the first opportunity I had of reading Srila Prabhupada's books. This was the story that I read, so I often reflect on that. So what happened when Mahaprabhu was sitting on the banks of the Ganga with his students, and he was demonstrating his erudite scholarship, and that Brahmin, Ratnagarbha Acharya, recited that verse from Srimad Bhagavatam describing the beauty of Krishna in the forests of Braj as he was seen by the wives of the Yogic Brahmins. What effect hearing that verse had on Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, we will discuss in our session next week at the same time, and you're all invited. And we'll conclude today. If there are any, we can take questions for a few minutes.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu, for the wonderful class. Hare Krishna, anybody has any question? You can raise your digital hand, put in the chat. Hare Krishna, Prabhu. So most of the new students keep asking, like they can't read the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, but then Krishna book includes all the 90 chapters in a synopsis form by Srila Prabhupada. So still they can read all the pastimes with the gopis in the Krishna book?
Yeah, of course, you can read everything in the Krishna book. Actually, we were here in Mayapur, Rameshwar Prabhu. He's here in Mayapur, and we were discussing with him last week how Prabhupada had his books. Prabhupada had his books, were the Bhagavatam that he personally published in Delhi, and Prabhupada brought those books to America. And Prabhupada was personally distributing those books. And then Prabhupada, he inspired his disciples to begin the Back to Godhead magazine, and they were personally making the printing and also contributing articles and photos and pictures, and they were personally binding Back to Godhead, and devotees were selling Back to Godhead magazine. They were not able to sell Prabhupada's Bhagavatams. They weren't able to, but they were selling Back to Godhead magazines. And then when the Krishna book was published, with all the pictures, Prabhupada established the art department, the Bhaktivedanta, folk, I forget what it's called, the first art department in the late 1960s in Los Angeles. And the books, the Krishna book had all the pictures of the Krishna Leela. That became so popular, that book, devotees were distributing that like hotcakes. They were able to distribute the Krishna book. So Prabhupada's vision with the Krishna book actually was for mass distribution. So Krishna book is meant for everybody. As I mentioned, I got the Krishna book, and I was not a devotee. I just a student, and I read the story in the Krishna book, and I still remember. It was so enchanting. So certainly, yeah, new devotees, you can read the Krishna book. It was a standard program when I was a young devotee. At night, we would read Krishna book together in the temple. Devotees living in the temple read the Krishna book. Nowadays, we don't hear so much about Krishna book, but yeah, certainly Krishna book is a very, very important contribution to humanity given by Srila Prabhupada, and all devotees should read Krishna book. It's very wonderful. So we encourage you to read Krishna book, sure.
Thank you, Prabhu. Archana Mataji, Hare Krishna, you can unmute. Please unmute. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Please be louder, Mataji.
Hare Krishna. I just have Hare Krishna Dandavat Pranam Prabhuji. I have a question. You just telling the story of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Gadadhar Pandit went to him and he spoke regarding your father is a scholar, your grandfather was also a scholar, and then after that, yeah, Prabhuji, after that the discussion, it's not like it's broken, like what happened, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, how he answers to that, Prabhuji? We want to
He
know.
doesn't answer. He doesn't answer. He just accepts. Mahaprabhu, after saying that, Mahaprabhu, he's just accepting. He's kind of saying, he's indicating that, oh yes, okay. He doesn't, there's no further discussion. There's no like debate. Mahaprabhu silently accepts that, okay, he's been corrected by his guru that you don't have to give up the teaching. You carry on with the teaching and you practice Krishna consciousness. It's not that you have to stop teaching. So he accepts. And he says that, Tomar dui charane prashad, tomar dui charan prashade, navadipe keho more nahi paribivade. That no one can stand before me or offer an argument to my commentaries in all of Navadip. So how I'm indebted to you. So your advice, certainly I will take. And then Mahaprabhu, that's it. That's the end of the discussion. And then Mahaprabhu goes to the Ganga with his students to carry on with the class. Now we'll hear next week that it's not that Mahaprabhu is disobeying the orders of his guru, who's telling him to straighten up and just give the normal class. He's unable to. The whole point is that he's unable to. He's unable to, and we'll hear about that more next week. He's unable to give the class like he did in the past. He's just over, and now we'll see that there's one verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam has such an effect on him that we'll hear next week the effect that it has.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Dandavad Pranam.
Okay, thank you all very much. We will carry on where we left off next week.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Dandavad Pranam.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna,
Prabhuji. Dandavad Pranam. Very much, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Dandavad Pranam.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Okay, perfect, Prabhu. I think we can take your question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Yes.
We can take your question next week. Prabhu just left. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Thank you.